Hey guys.
Hey
Good
there.
morning.
We're glad you made it.
Yeah, a bit of a scheduling mishap. All's well. Happy to get started.
Okay, absolutely. So, why don't we start with just a brief introduction to people who are not familiar with Koii? What does Koii do, in general? And then
Yeah,
we'll
so
jump into the
the,
questions.
sure. So the main thing with Koii, people might be familiar with DePINs and all the kind of distributed computing stuff that's been happening. Koii is the first and I think only network that uses your home computer to power AI agents and a whole suite of other services. So it's a real chance for anybody who's been in crypto for a long time to get access to tokens very easily. And you can do it all from your home computer completely for free.
Perfect. And so you said the AI agents. Who are your competitors right now when it comes to like traditional industries? What business are you trying to replace?
Yeah, so you look at the traditional hosting cloud, it always runs out of a data center, and that means that someone has to run a really long cable from, your house or wherever you live out to the middle of nowhere where there's a big building full of computers. Ultimately, this is a pretty expensive thing to set up, and while it was necessary in the early internet, it really isn't anymore just because of how good the fiber optic cables and how strong our home computers are. Um, so what we're really trying to do with Koii is to leapfrog a whole generation of applications that are running at the edge. This means they can run on your home computer and they can get a tactical advantage out of that gives them, improved hosting or reduced costs, or sometimes even just allows you to make passive income with your computer.
Wonderful. So that is basically like mining back in the day, but instead of mining tokens, you actually produce something of a value in a computation.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider this as useful work that's being done. So mining, you're typically wasting the energy to secure the network, whereas with a compute project on Koii, you're typically actually building something real, and your computer's doing some real work, which is why a token can be issued.
Absolutely. And, of course, I guess, it's a topic on everybody's heads. How does, DeepSeek and the new developments in AI influence you guys? Like, do you see any opportunities there?
Well, I mean, this has been going on for a while, actually. People don't realize this, but there's a lot of models that beat ChatGPT at different things. The key here is the models will continue improving, and the thing that you need for models is hardware and access to data. And so as individuals, we actually have a lot of hardware and a lot of data, and each of these models, as they get progressively better, it gives more opportunity for people kind of at the edge to actually participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, how did you like decide to start Koii? So, how old is the project, and how the whole thing started?
Yeah, so the beginning of Koii happened kind of very early on in the COVID pandemic era. We were all kind of working on some sort of related projects through my consulting firm for a while. I had a think tank in Chicago that I was operating, and we spent a long time researching and developing different types of technologies that could run on the edge. And at the end of the day, what we noticed is there's a need for a generic structure that all these apps could run inside of. And so we started building the Koii node as a kind of standard interface. And so that's kind of how it works now. You get the simple app that you install on your computer, and then you've got all these additional apps that you can run inside of the Koii app. So each one of those additional apps is a DApp. It's an AI project or something that needs your computing capacity. And you can run those all inside the Koii app, and it's as easy as just pressing play on top of them. But we noticed this need, and we've kind of started branching it out as a way to support that market.
And how far are you in your development? Because I think you guys did start a mainnet, didn't you?
Yeah, we've been on mainnet for about a month now, and spent about the last 2 years on different test nets, building things up and verifying that the network would work properly. And this has been kind of a process of building all kinds of different apps on top of the Koii stack. So throughout the last 2 years, we've had at any point about 5 or 10,000 devices available, and we've been actually running the test nets so that we can use all of those edge devices to test out new types of applications. For people that don't understand, there's a huge amount of complexity when it comes to running compute jobs on smaller and smaller devices. And so we had to have these test nets run so that we could actually verify that the computation worked as expected and that everything was fair and reasonable when it came to the token distributions. But at this point, I'd say we've got probably one of the most robust structures in the market for this kinds of like kind of distributed computing work.
And how do you think that like the decentralized compute influences the new economy? Like, well, what difference does it make for the average Joe who decides to run his AI agent?
Yeah, so the way the internet used to work, in the 90s, you had to have your own server for every company. So each company would have their server. Google, for example, had their first server in their dorm room in college. And then, eventually they got to be a fairly large company, so they moved the server to their office. When it got too big for the office, they had to move the racks of computers into a data warehouse. And that's kind of how the first cloud centers started. Since then, pretty much everybody has been using cloud centers for everything because it's just a little bit more efficient, compared to having it in your office. The exciting thing though is over the last 20 years, since kind of the cloud era started, we've had this sort of shift that, now we have a lot of, edge computing devices. So we have everybody's laptops and phones are actually very powerful. And we also have really good internet connections. And so progressively it's been more and more possible to have all of the work move out of the data center onto this cluster of devices that we all own on the edge. And the opportunity for AI agents here is that as opposed to running AI like ChatGPT out in a data center somewhere, AI could actually run on your home computer. And, sometimes you might need to have your computer, connected to the system and you might need a lot of capacity and sometimes I might. And so when I need a lot of capacity, I can borrow a bit from you. And when you need a lot of capacity, you can borrow a bit from me. And so as a group, we're able to do things that, typically would have taken a very large organization in the past, but we can just kind of collaborate to get what we need.
Got it. And I see in the comments there is a request for people who are not familiar with technical language. So let's say somebody who just stumbled across Koii. How would you like define it like in the simplest term? What does it like for the user who just like, hey, what it is? How can I join? What does it mean to me as a user?
Yeah, so Koii is your chance to own the internet, really. At the end of the day, the internet is just a huge network of computers, and if you have a computer, there's no reason that you shouldn't have a piece of the internet. The question is just, what does your computer do to make some money, and how does your computer actually participate economically in this whole global system? You can think of this kind of like Uber or Airbnb, where like in the past you had to be a big hotel chain and own a really big building so that you could rent hotel rooms, and now you can do it with Airbnb, and you can rent one small hotel room because you just happen to have an extra room in your house. Or with Uber, for example, you can offer a ride-sharing opportunity to someone. They can hop in your car, you can drive them from point A to point B, and you don't have to be part of a big taxi company or have a special car just to be able to do that. And this is the breaking down of the economy and allowing people at the edge to be able to participate and offer services to each other. But the real thing that's exciting about this is the internet has always been this monolithic thing. So if you think, hotels are a big monolithic thing. You've got this huge building and it's got all these rooms in it and it's on 24/7 and there's always people that work there. That's what it used to take to have a hotel room, and that made it expensive. But now if you can have an Airbnb, you can maybe have a room for much cheaper, and you can have the added value of getting to know the person that's there, and like kind of you have some advantages of having a smaller level of service. And so that's kind of what Koii does with computing. And we've just begun to scratch the surface of what's possible here. But the really exciting thing is coordination between people instead of everybody having to plug into some big service. So typically the way the internet works now is you got to go plug into the big AI or the big social network. We all have to use Facebook, and we have to give Facebook all of our data, and there's no privacy and there's no security, and we get nothing back economically. And that's, it's not the fairest deal, and it's not really necessarily the nicest way to do it. Whereas what we're doing with Koii is it's very much to support people having their own agency in these networks, and it gives people a lot of the economic power back, and a lot of the freedom, from a privacy and security standpoint as well.
I love it. And I love the way you put it, like an Airbnb for compute. Elegant and simple. So guys, you started the mainnet. I understand how the supply for the computation can join. What about the demand? Like, where do you see it coming primarily? Is it, small individual projects? Is it startups, or do you see any enterprise demand?
Yeah, so I think the startups and the enterprise demand side is mostly about trying to help people appreciate the opportunities they can do with this. So what we've looked at is there's all these devices that we have access to, and there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of things that Airbnb can do better than a hotel. So the case of Airbnb as an example, you have, a local host who knows the area and can recommend a restaurant to you, and they might recommend a better restaurant than what the hotel might do, because the hotel's trying to recommend a restaurant that they can send 500 people to every day, whereas the Airbnb host knows a little bit more and can give you a little bit of a nuanced recommendation. On Koii, we kind of think of it like that. So a lot of the demand has been from people who want really nuanced access to data, or they want to do things where it's all about coordinating a group of people. One cool example recently was Sonos. So Sonos is using people's computers to mine different sounds off the internet, and they're building a library of sounds and actually an AI that can generate different sound effects, so that when you're building a video game or a movie, you can ask this AI to create the right sound effect for the moment. That's actually like a huge market out there, but the trick has been that the market that's out there already doesn't have the ability to process all this information or hold it. And they need a lot of human feedback. And so the combination of having actual people behind the machines and then also being able to access the internet from so many different access points gives that particular application a huge advantage. So that's Sonos on Koii, and you can actually mine their token, from the Koii node, which is pretty cool. And they've got a whole suite of applications where they're, kind of building the whole app stack on Koii as the backend. I think they've got about 1,000 or 2,000 nodes on Koii now. There's a lot of similar applications to that, where it's just like, it's about being able to go crawl the internet, hold the data, process the data somehow, and then be able to put that back into some kind of an AI pipeline. But you do it kind of with the added value of having actual people as a part of the system.
And for the user of this computation, how big is the advantage? Like, why would they go to Koii instead of Amazon?
Yeah, so the cost advantage is really significant. If you look at it right now, you can pay on Koii in any token, right? So if you have your own token, you can pay Koii nodes with your token. And if Koii node operators want to earn that token, then you've got this really amazing arbitrage where someone's going to take your token in the meantime and give you compute or data, and then you've got that asset that you can now go out and make money with. And ideally, what happens is you use that asset to then generate value for the token holders. So you create this very nice circular economy where the token holder who gave you the asset gets rewarded for helping you create something of value. This is what we kind of think of as crowd creating, where you can have something appear very quickly that has a lot of value, and it's just a matter of scaling up a large community of people to do something as a group, which is usually that's kind of the idea behind a lot of Web3, kind of what we call protocols. It's always been at the core of kind of how this industry works, but on Koii we've really taken it to kind of the end state. I think it's very convenient for everybody who's been involved.
That's interesting. I think that's the biggest advantage cost nowadays. If you can save some money and if it's a still reliable network, why don't you choose Koii then, right? And another question.
It's not about saving some money. It's about the entire compute value that you have being crowdsourced instead of being paid. Right. So typically how these companies work is you have to raise money so that you can spend money on compute or data. And on Koii, you don't have to do that. You can actually just start from day one, you can create a token, and then you can convince the community to come along with you on that journey. And if the community of node operators provide compute and data to you, then the value of your token will go up and they'll be rewarded. And that's the exciting kind of circular process that happens.
And what about Web2 industries? Let's say somebody who is not in crypto, doesn't know what tokens is. Can they potentially join other ways at this moment?
Yeah, there's always the option that they can buy they can buy a token indirectly. So we have some products coming online for that use Koii to gather different data from the internet or use Koii to host types of applications or storage. In those cases, though, behind the scenes, what's happening, they're paying with a credit card, and then behind the scenes, we're swapping that out for a token, and then the node operator is getting paid. So those are always an option. They're not the most interesting people to work with, though, because they typically want us to do things less decentralized, and that means that there's, less R&D, and it's a bit less exciting for us on the tech side to keep building things out.
Well, that's interesting. I have a feeling that both Web2 and Web3 should use DePIN for it to become the mainstream. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think the issue, though, is a lot of Web2 CTOs typically don't care as much for DePIN. It's just, I think the mindset of a CTO is very much that we don't want to create more problems, right? So if you don't want to create more problems, then you don't want to try something new. You want to stick with what you've got, and even if it costs a little bit of money, it's not a big deal. I think the exciting opportunity, though, is AI is now creating, millions of new jobs and millions of new companies every day. And for many of those, I think DePIN and decentralized infrastructure is a big advantage that, from a strategic standpoint, makes sense for them to start using from day one.
And when do you think we will hit the mass adoption? Should we see the new generation of CTOs to come?
Mass adoption for crypto or for DePIN?
What is that again?
You said when will we hit mass adoption? And like for crypto, I think we're already at basically mass adoption.
For the DePIN and decentralized compute among the Web2 industries.
Yeah, I mean, I think mass adoption is an incremental thing. I think what typically happens is a new company comes out with a better architecture and then they win. So if you look at what happened with Figma, Figma is actually running on a lot of edge compute. So when you do something on Figma on your home computer, a lot of the time the way that Figma is designed is that a lot of the edge computing actually happens on your device, and that's why they're able to reduce costs a lot. So Figma effectively destroyed Photoshop's market share over the last 5 or 8 years, and there was that big acquisition a couple of years ago. But that kind of came out of nowhere, and until then, you didn't see this big shift on the use of edge computing. But once that product gets really popular, then it kind of creates that paradigm shift, and then everybody wants to do it that way. And I think this is kind of what we've seen with a lot of technological shifts over the history. So it's not about shifting the current companies, but it's about seeing new companies that rise to dominance who are using a new paradigm.
So basically, you think there's going to be some startups that focus their core business based on DePIN, and they will take over because they will have an advantage, in essence.
Yeah, and I think, this is already kind of happening, right? If you look at Uber versus taxi companies, I think that's kind of a similar paradigm. Uber won because they used mobile phones better. So most taxi companies didn't have a mobile app and Uber did. So then, which one are you going to use? Probably Uber. That's typically how this goes. The shift to mobile was a pretty significant one that saw a lot of legacy companies get just demolished in terms of losing huge amounts of revenue. I think similarly with AI, what we're seeing now is the new user interface is a robot that talks to you. And so it doesn't matter if you have a mobile app. It matters if you have a robot that can talk to people. And that's going to be a massive shift over the next 5 years. So making better robots that talk to people, that have access to more information, that are more private, secure, and have better functionality is kind of that's the big shift. That's the big shift that's underway right now. I think the shift with DePIN though is we're going to see a huge group of people that really, really genuinely care about edge computing as a desire. And this is something where we're already seeing huge groups of people that say they don't want to use, kind of Silicon Valley tech. So we're seeing people who say boycott Silicon Valley because, Elon Musk just won the U.S. election. And for those of us in tech, we're it doesn't really matter to us, and we can't see why they're thinking that way. But I think a lot of people are now becoming very afraid of AI, and they're still going to want the tools. They're just not going to want to use the ones that are being provided to them. And so there's a big market being created for decentralization, especially where data and privacy are concerned.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think every crisis kind of helps blockchain in a way, Every privacy breach brings it to the mass adoption. I mean, the whole concept, of data ownership, decentralization, security, etc. So, what about the new upcoming things with Koii? What should we expect?
Yeah, so one of the big things right now is we've got agents coming out on the network pretty soon, which is basically you can run an AI on your home computer and it can do some real work for you and make you some passive income, but also help towards causes you care about. The agents on Koii is kind of something we've been working on for a long time though, and it ties together a whole bunch of different pieces. The really exciting thing about Koii is that you can crowdsource all this computing capacity, right? And so if you have an agent running on Koii, it can actually act on your behalf to crowdsource capacity to solve a problem and then reward all the people who helped. And that's the exciting possibility here in the near future is we'll be able to basically automate the whole flow of designing an application, deploying it to all these devices, recruiting all the devices seamlessly, and then kind of iterating towards a broader global solution. And that's, I think that's kind of the holy grail for all of this stuff is, you, me, and all of our friends here don't have to actually, we don't have to know what's happening on our computer, but we can know that it's something that we approved. We can know it's within the bounds of what we want to happen. And we also don't have to really make a lot of choices because we have an agent that we trust that's doing the work for us. And then we can kind of sit back and relax and know that the world is moving forward and that we're part of it. I think that's happening in the very near future here, not only on Koii, but on a lot of other networks. And then now the trick is how do we bridge them all together and make them exciting. So the really cool thing for Koii in the next 2 weeks is we're bridging to Solana, and we'll have the Solana VM connected to Koii. And then we'll have a whole bunch of hopefully DEX trading volume and some interesting opportunities for all the tokens that already exist on Koii to get listed on different DEXs.
That's interesting. So we'll keep our eyes open. We'll keep our eyes open. And also, as listeners may have seen, we're doing partnership with Koii. So this is one of the projects you will be able to participate, and the only decentralized compute currently on the platform. So I'm very excited to see you guys on, and we should discuss of maybe running some AYDO jobs on Koii too. I think that would make sense.
Yeah, definitely. Also, if you have bug bounties, you can now recruit Koii nodes to solve them with our AI agents, and the agents will actually write the code, test the code, and argue with each other. So there's a lot of opportunities there that could be pretty fruitful as well.
Perfect. And Al, any final thoughts?
Just that everybody should probably get the Koii node. It's free, easy to use, and we have bounties and kind of additional bonuses coming out every week. So if you get the node installed on your computer, you get free access to all these new tokens, and you get a chance to try all of our latest AI tech right out of the box. So first dibs on everything and free money. Couldn't be better, right?
Oh, by the way, we do have a question, additional question in the comment section. So what is the reward for running the node? And let's see, are the tokens that provided by the third-party projects are verified? And do they have enough liquidity to incentivize node runner?
Yeah, so for most of them, if you're in the node, you can see actually the ones that have been verified by the Koii team. And then for the most part, most of them are in beta stage right now, but they will be traded on the DEX. So basically what happens is you're getting in early on all these projects, you're getting into their pre-mine, and then the token will launch probably in the next month or two. So pretty much all of those tokens actually you're getting in at the earliest that anybody's getting in, and you're probably getting more tokens than even some of their investors will. So the key thing is get in there early and try to help them out.
Perfect. And that's the way to do it. By the way, additional announcements, we guys are running the open beta next week. So if you want to try it out, if you want to connect third-party devices and do the data streamings, please go to AYDO AI. Next week, we're going to have links so you can download the app and try. But with that being said, again, Al, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us what Koii is and how do you think it will shape the new DePIN economy.
Thanks. Great to be here. Bye for now, folks.
Okay. Bye-bye, guys.